I think this is going to be my last mossing video of this segment of my life, which I will call wedding moss. Something out here smells. The day of, I sprayed it with water and it had a little mint extract in it, little mint essential oil. But some of this stuff just sat too long moist and it's starting to not smell so good. So whatever the bride wants to do with it, I have no feelings tied up in that. These are floral pins, $7.49 at Hobby Lobby. They were too long. They stick up, they don't hide. When you've got this thing screwed into a pallet, it's just not the best case scenario if you really want to hide those pins. So lesson learned, these are great, but you need the ones that have coating on them. Gray was the closest I could get. I couldn't get green. And they're nice and short and they're so sturdy. But the day of and the night before, I got so paranoid about the moss falling off the wall because of all the wind that was in the forecast that I just started putting those floral pins in absolutely everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. And yeah, you can see how cheap they are. They're like just 2 weeks, 1 week, and it's already like the coating, it's already losing the coating. So I have extra moss over here, triple washed, that I gathered the day before, just to kind of beef it up for the day of. So it's been kind of falling off ever since around the edges. So before I deliver it to the bride and groom tomorrow, I'm gonna beef it up one last time and just show you a couple things. You can never get it wet enough, it seems like. It constantly dries out if it's in any kind of open air. So because I have double and triple, you know, these pins, I'm kind of taking some of these pins out. I'm adding more marsh moss, thread moss. I'm taking a heavy duty pin. This one isn't coated, but it seems to be stainless steel. I found that at, I want to say Home Depot the night before the wedding, perhaps. I was still out trying to find them. This silver bullet. The key, you have to kind of move it a little until you're not on the chicken wire, because the chicken wire is kind of heavy duty. So look at those little threads, those little legs, they're so cute. This stuff is not super pretty looking. We could beef it up with a little bit. Just put it on top. And so what I discovered when I was assembling these things is that this is kind of a wire cutter from Hobby Lobby. It's not as heavy duty as my husband's because he used to be an electrician. So when those pins would pop out the other side, I would come in with this, try to trim them from behind. But then those little metal pieces are flying everywhere. And I really didn't want them to fly in my eyeball. So yeah, it might be better to trim them ahead. It might be better to get shorter ones next time. I'm sure that's a special order. I'm sure it's not as cheap as the standard size, but my gosh, they would have pushed right down in there, disappeared in the foam. I love the thickness on this foam. See that? The D kind of got jacked up a little bit. It's a little too flexible right now, which tells me that the foam has a crack in it. But if you push these floral pins down, the whole thing pops up from underneath. So, see how it wants to fold in half? Yeah, it's not supposed to do that. It's a solid piece. So there's still my little wildflowers in there. I don't know how much longer they're gonna last. I took the magnolias out of the heart, so it doesn't really look like a heart anymore. But wherever there's chicken wire showing, I'm just gonna beef it up a little bit. Put the awesome wood staples in there. Those are made for your wire. When you have to put some wire in where there's wood, they're heavy duty. They're good for the mossing. Just beef it up a little right here. Put one of those guys in because I am not a fan of these guys. I'm just afraid to take them out because I'm afraid that his whole initial is just gonna like fall out. I could replace these with the heavy duty ones. Or I could just leave it as is and let it go and stop, Kelly, stop. See what happens? Let me show you. There's clay on the back. And when you spray the moss, the clay continues to dry out because it's pretty thick. Not all the water gets down to it. So once it dries enough, your velvet moss just starts to pop off and fall down. So the day of, that didn't happen, thank God. But it can happen now, which is why this sort of moss wall is not sustainable at all. The thread moss out of the marsh is amazing and durable. And my neighbor has 3 chihuahuas. Well, 1 chihuahua. The other 2 look like him, and they're just as loud, but I think they have another name, another breed. Anyway, he's running the neighborhood. He's in charge. So, nothing looks terribly Charlie Brown here. I think I'm ready to hand it off, but I do have these remaining pieces of thread, so I can just kind of pop them in. Pop them in, because she's getting a huge box of this from me, and she'll have that available for any situations that she might try. And once you realize it's not surviving, it's not thriving, let's let it go. It was great the day of. It's kind of like the wedding cake. Like, do you really want to eat it a year after it's been in the freezer? I don't know. I mean, some of them want to stay green, right? Oh, look at these guys. They want to stay green. They want to stay green and velvety. But some of the other patches, not so much. So she can take this chicken wire, take all these pins out, just dump all the moss in her in an area, and she can cultivate her own. She could eventually end up with enough to build a wall, make an indoor wall. They've got all the right decorating ideas that go right along with that. Hobbit theme, which is so popular right now and so amazingly awesome. It's right up my alley. So, not all of my friends are fans of moss, but one of my friends wasn't until the wedding. And when she got her hands in it, she found out how awesome it is. And now I'm just gonna like deliver some to her and go, here, I'm sprinkling this in your bare spot. Let's see what happens. But the stuff that comes out of the marsh really does need, it does need a goodly amount of water, at least until it settles and gets acclimated. So, I mean, I don't want to set her up for disappointment. She and her kids might have to take over responsibility for, you know, squirt it down a little bit. I have some marsh moss I stuck in the front yard and it's pretty dry. It's not doing much, but once we start getting some rain, I think it's gonna perk right up. So these three are ready for her. I'll probably cover them up so the marsh doesn't dry out. I'm gonna put some plastic film over them. These clear recycle bags, they let the light on them. This stuff likes light, not necessarily heat. It's gonna hold the moisture and they'll be ready for delivery. So I would say Home Depot is probably the place, but I really think I got these smaller green squares. Pretty sure I got them at Lowe's. They were a godsend. As soon as I had those in my basket, I was like, oh, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna come together. It's gonna come together. You just don't realize it until kind of the day of. There was a lot of assembly required the day of. My husband didn't know he was hired for that job. He certainly wasn't paid for that job. And all the deadlines and all the work and all the stress was not something that he necessarily was a fan of. I signed up for that. So yeah, I could put thread all around the outside since it's not nailing up to a wall, and then it would be completely covered and she could use it as a little piece of decor. But I'm giving her all that moss and some pins, and she can do that if she wants with all of her free time, which I happen to know she has none. So I'm looking forward to passing this off, continuing to clean up, get all the little moss threads and legs back out on the property where they can start over. They're so cute. And stay mossy, and I will too. And keep posting your ideas, because you never know what's gonna turn out amazing. And in this case, it was exactly what the bride wanted. So it was a huge success. I just found out through a lot of trial and error. Yeah. So now you know it can be done. Just don't call me at midnight asking for advice, okay? Because I still have to post all of the making of, where I made these 3 boards, where I got the 2 walls assembled, like attaching. But I have to say, the attaching part was super easy. My husband would beg to differ because of all the screws, the drywall screws he had to use, but these things made it so easy to attach the moss to the foam on the wall. It was the attaching the pallets together where they would be stable and nothing would fall over and nothing would fall off. That was a lot of work, and a lot of that work was the day of. So make sure you have plenty of bungee cords for hauling this stuff stably in the back of your truck. If you have a big van, that might be easier. And I don't recommend trying to fit a wedding and work in on the same day. I would allot yourself plenty of time for assembly. Once they were assembled, they kind of stayed together really nicely, especially down in the cool garage. So I think I would have relieved a little stress if I had gone ahead and put them together early. Just don't leave them outside in the blazing sun. Don't do that. I moved them out here so I could work on tearing them apart out here. But down in the garage, in the cool, workshop is the place. And have fun and be creative. And if something doesn't work, take it apart and start again. That's what I had to do with the heart. I had to rebuild the whole block because I built it on a screen and kept it in the kitchen, in the dining area, and it didn't like the dining area. It didn't like the screen material, and the whole thing was going to fall off at the wedding. These foam pads with chicken wire, with the moss stuck in them, with 10,000 of these and these. It worked. It worked. And if you can't find what you're looking for locally, it kind of makes sense to order it online. And I would definitely recommend that. Your specialty items. So yeah, I'm finished. I'm exhausted. I'm ready for like a cruise. And I have no moss to babysit. I have like 3 terrariums in there that I've made. They're like therapy terrariums. And they require little to no maintenance. So I'm gonna focus on things like that and making sure my trails are maintained and beautified and the leaves stay off of them so the moss can thrive. And I'm just grateful to God for creating moss in the first place, and that I was able to do something different at a wedding with a living moss wall. So a wedding moss wall can be done. It is not cheap. It is very labor intensive, and it was all moss off my property. That's what boggles my mind. Like, it all came from this 1.5 acres in Branson, Missouri. It blows my mind. So God knew that I was going to find a way to be creative in this life, and who would have thought it was going to be with moss? I certainly didn't. So I'm grateful. See you soon.